The young and the restless spoilers Victor Newman had always believed that his iron will and decades of business acumen made him the ultimate arbiter of what was best for his sprawling Newman clan. Whether it was boardroom battles at Newman Enterprises or family disputes at home, Victor saw himself as the captain steering the ship, confident that every decision he made would keep his loved ones safe and prosperous. Yet time and again, his helpful interventions have ended in disaster, leaving broken hearts, shattered trusts, and occasionally worse. Now, with his latest plot to derail the burgeoning relationship between Clare Newman and Kyle Abbott, Victor seems poised to once again overplay his hand and risk a downfall of his own making. The seed of distrust, Clare Newman, Victor's beloved granddaughter, had spent much of her young life trying to escape the shadow of the Newman name. After a string of disappointments, failed romances, career setbacks, and a fractured relationship with her mother, she finally began to flourish when she reconnected with Kyle Abbott. Kyle, scion of the Abbott dynasty and a former corporate rival of Victor's, had grown from a pampered playboy into a capable businessman in his own right. His genuine affection for Clare, his willingness to listen, and his support for her professional ambitions made him, in Clare's eyes, the perfect partner. Victor, however, saw only danger. To him, Kyle was still an Abbott, entirely untrustworthy, greedy, and more than capable of leading Clare astray or using her as a pawn in some corporate maneuver. He believed that if he could break up this pairing early, he could protect Clare from heartbreak and shield Newman Enterprises from future Abbott incursions. So Victor turned to one of his oldest and most unscrupulous allies, Audra Charles. Audra Charles returns to Genoa City. Audra Charles had once been a rising star at Chancellor Winters, the powerful cosmetics firm. Fierce, intelligent, and unafraid to play dirty, she clashed with Newman Enterprises on multiple occasions. In the heat of one particularly nasty takeover attempt, Victor had hired her to sow chaos at Chancellor Winters, and it had worked, albeit with collateral damage. Audra's sharp mind and seductive charm had proved a potent combination. Under Victor's patronage, she and Kyle had not only done business together but had also shared a passionate affair that neither could entirely forget. Eventually, the partnership crumbled. Kyle, ashamed of how Audra's manipulations had hurt his friends and family, cut ties with her. Audra, ever resourceful, moved on, only to be left yearning for a triumphant return to power. When Victor approached her with an offer to come back to Genoa City and execute his latest mission, break up Clare, as he put it, Audra's eyes lit up. Here was the chance to settle old scores, reclaim her status, and perhaps even rekindle that forbidden flame with Kyle. The plan unfolds. Victor's blueprint was deceptively simple: reintroduce Audra to Kyle under the guise of a high-profile business consultancy. With Newman Enterprises launching a new beauty division, Audra would be brought in as an industry expert to advise both Newman and Chancellor Winters on market trends. Fan the embers of past passion. Victor was certain that Kyle's residual attraction to Audra would reawaken, creating jealousy and mistrust in Clare's mind. Exploit every misstep. Any hint of closeness between Audra and Kyle would be magnified and leaked to Clare, courtesy of Victor's loyal PR machine, leading Clare to doubt Kyle's fidelity. Step in as the savior. Once Clare broke things off in anger, Victor would comfort her, positioning himself as the only man she could trust, and steer her toward a more suitable match. Someone loyal to the Newman legacy. Audra, who knew better than most the power of subtle manipulation, immediately set to work. She began with innocent-looking business meetings, private breakfasts to discuss market projections, late-night strategy sessions over wine, even casual texts about cosmetics trends. Each encounter was carefully photographed by a private investigator Victor had hired. Those images, when leaked to Clare's circle of friends, would be the spark needed to ignite suspicion. Warning signs and early cracks. At first, everything went according to Victor's script. Clare noticed the texts. She saw Kyle stepping out of a coffee shop with Audra. She heard rumors, planted by Victor's operatives, of an office romance rekindling. Hurt and confused, she confronted Kyle, who was blindsided. Kyle insisted there was nothing to the meetings beyond work, but the seed of doubt had been planted. Claire withdrew emotionally, sending curt responses and making excuses to skip dates. Yet Victor underestimated two crucial things: the depth of Claire and Kyle's bond, and Audra's own unpredictable nature. Though Audra was determined to follow Victor's orders, she also yearned to prove herself as more than a pawn. As she spent time with Kyle again, she found herself genuinely respecting his integrity and his devotion to Claire. The lines between manipulation and reality blurred. Audra began to question Victor's motives. Was he protecting Claire, or was he simply trying to control her life and the future of Newman Enterprises? A plan on the brink of collapse by the time Victor prepared to deliver the final blow, an anonymous dossier of photos and fabricated emails, Audra was already wrestling with guilt. She had grown to admire Claire's resilience and Kyle's honesty. Worse, she had begun to feel genuine remorse for her part in the scheme. The moment of truth came at a gala hosted by Newman Enterprises to celebrate the launch of the new beauty line. Audra, tasked with releasing the dossier to Claire's inner circle, hesitated. Meanwhile, Claire, still wounded but desperate for answers, confronted Audra directly, accusing her of seducing Kyle. Audra, taken aback, found herself blurting out the whole story: Victor's plan, her role in it, and the lengths to which they had gone to spy on Claire. The revelation hit Claire like a thunderbolt. Hurt gave way to rage, not at Kyle, but at Victor. For the first time, she saw her grandfather not as a protector, but as a tyrant willing to sacrifice her happiness to satisfy his ego. The fallout and what comes next. Victor, blindsided by Audra's confession, watched in stunned silence as Claire stormed out of the gala, followed by Kyle. His carefully constructed empire of lies unraveled in a matter of minutes. Audra, too, was left reeling, caught between her loyalty to Victor and her newfound conscience. What happens next is anyone's guess. Victor will undoubtedly try to salvage his reputation and reassert control, but the damage is done. Claire, betrayed by her grandfather, may turn her back on the Newman name. Kyle, furious at being used as a pawn, could walk away for good. And Audra, who once reveled in manipulation, may find redemption in telling the truth. One thing is certain: Victor's belief that he knows what's best for his family has once again led him down a path of destruction. In soap opera fashion, his hubris may be his undoing, and the Newman legacy could be forever altered by this spectacular misstep. As the dust settles over Genoa City, viewers will be left asking, when will Victor learn that love and trust cannot be manufactured, and that the heart wants what it wants, no matter how much power and money stand in the way? Victor Newman had never been a man to shy away from getting what he wanted, no matter the cost. With his empire built on manipulation, control, and cold logic, he was used to bending situations to his will. But as Victor set his sights on dismantling his granddaughter Claire's relationship with Kyle Abbott, he had no idea just how far his plan would spiral out of control. And Audra Charles, well, she had long since learned that striking deals with the devil often led to a personal hell of regret. But at this point, it hardly mattered to her. She was already in too deep. Audra's deal with the devil. Audra Charles was no stranger to risky business, but this latest scheme Victor had drawn her into felt different. She had once been the architect of her own destiny, a sharp, calculating woman who never hesitated to use her charm and intellect to get ahead. But now, with Victor's hand firmly on her shoulder, Audra had become a pawn in his game. Though she could hardly admit to herself that she was okay with it. What had begun as a simple, seductive mission to drive a wedge between Claire and Kyle had evolved into something darker. Victor's manipulative tactics had always had a way of working out in his favor, but this time, the stakes felt higher, the consequences more personal. Audra had already begun to feel the pangs of guilt creeping into her heart. She had agreed to Victor's plan because it promised power, redemption, and perhaps even the chance to right the wrongs of her past. But as she watched Claire's naive belief in Victor's protection, Audra couldn't shake the feeling that she might be playing the wrong side of history. But there was nothing she could do. Or was there? Claire's awakening. Claire Newman had grown up surrounded by a whirlwind of business deals, manipulative power plays, and family loyalty that often felt more like a curse than a blessing. She had always sought validation from her grandfather Victor, despite the harsh way he wielded control over her life. She wanted his approval. She longed for his acceptance. And, in her heart, she believed that if she could prove to him that Kyle Abbott was the right man for her, then maybe, just maybe, she could earn her place in Victor's world. But Claire's rose-colored vision of her relationship with Kyle was about to be shattered by a harsh truth. Kyle, the man she loved, wanted more than what she was capable of offering at this moment. While Clare was still recovering from past heartbreaks and struggling to navigate the world of business, Kyle had his eyes set on bigger dreams, and he wasn't going to wait around forever. He needed someone who could keep up with him, someone who could help him ascend in the cutthroat world of corporate power. It was an uncomfortable reality, one that Clare wasn't ready to face. And that's when Audra Charles re-entered her life, bringing with her not only temptation but a painful reminder of Kyle's past. Holden Novak and the temptation of revenge. As if Clare's world wasn't complicated enough, Holden Novak, a charming and persistent businessman from Los Angeles, made his move. Though Clare had once brushed him off, she couldn't deny the pull of attraction. Holden had tried his hand at flirting with her before, and despite the tension between them, there was an undeniable spark. When Holden invited Clare to meet him at the GCAC, Genoa City Athletic Club, offering her a taste of a new drink, the Vesper, their chemistry was palpable. She wasn't interested in a relationship, at least not yet, but Holden made it clear that he wasn't going to give up so easily. Holden's flirtations were playful, but there was something beneath the surface, something darker. Clare, caught in the crossfire between Kyle's emotional distance and Holden's intriguing allure, found herself at a crossroads. Would she dare entertain the idea of exploring a relationship with Holden? Or was she simply using him as a distraction from the pain of her fractured relationship with Kyle? As Clare sipped the Vesper that Holden had so smoothly introduced her to, she began to realize that her emotional state was becoming clouded. Was she truly drawn to Holden? Or was she just seeking a temporary escape from her ongoing heartbreak? Audra's dark path. Meanwhile, Audra, who had once been a force of power and cunning, now stood at a precipice. She had played her part in the scheme, planting seeds of doubt in Clare's heart and feeding the suspicion about Kyle's loyalty. But the consequences were quickly unraveling. Clare, smart as she was, had already begun to notice the cracks in the facade. She knew Kyle was pulling away, but what she didn't know was the extent to which she was being manipulated. What would happen if Clare discovered the truth, that it was Audra, working under Victor's orders, who had orchestrated the whole thing? The possibility of Clare finding out about Audra and Kyle's past, about their brief but intense affair, loomed like a shadow over everything. If Clare discovered their history together, the betrayal would cut deep. The pain would be unbearable. But Audra knew better than anyone that Clare's heartbreak might just give her the leverage she needed to take things to the next level. There was a certain dangerous allure to watching Clare suffer, and Audra wasn't above exploiting that. But then, Holden Novak's reappearance in Clare's life gave Audra an idea. If she could turn Holden into an ally, or even a pawn in her game, she could manipulate the situation to her advantage. Audra knew how to play men, how to get what she wanted from them. Holden, with his charm and his eagerness to help Clare, could be the perfect tool in her manipulation. Clare's reckoning. As Clare struggled with her emotions and her conflicting feelings toward Kyle, Holden, and the manipulations that surrounded her, she found herself torn between love and revenge. If she discovered that Audra had been secretly orchestrating her heartbreak, would she retaliate? Would she use Holden, whom she had started to grow closer to, not just to seek solace, but to strike back at Kyle? The idea of using Holden to get back at Kyle, to hurt him the way she had been hurt, was tempting. But if Audra witnessed Clare and Holden together, if she saw them in a moment of weakness, perhaps in the heat of passion, Audra wouldn't hesitate to use it to her advantage. She knew that Holden had a dark side, and if pushed, he could be manipulated into doing her bidding. What if Audra could convince Holden to do something truly nefarious, something that would bring Clare's world crashing down even further? The choice ahead as the drama between Clare, Kyle, Audra, and Holden reached a boiling point. The ultimate question loomed: who would Clare choose? Would she go back to Kyle, the man who had distanced himself from her, or would she embrace Holden, a man who represented temptation and revenge? Or would she take a different path altogether, one where she might sever ties with both men and finally take control of her own destiny? The stage was set for an explosive confrontation. Clare's journey would either lead to emotional redemption or destructive chaos, depending on which path she chose. One thing was for certain: Victor's manipulation, Audra's scheming, and Holden's subtle provocations had set in motion a series of events that no one could predict. In the end, Clare's choice would not just affect her love life. It would determine the course of her future. And in Genoa City, where power and betrayal often walk hand in hand, no one is ever truly safe from the consequences of their actions. This extended narrative now includes an exploration of the emotional tension and shifting alliances, setting the stage for a thrilling conclusion to Clare's personal drama. It also introduces the potential for deep personal reckoning and manipulation, keeping readers on the edge of their seats.